I always say, I love my wife. I love her, but it really shows how much you love them once you get to a point to where you're on this thin line of losing them. Me and Jackie met in Pritchard. Both of us worked in Pritchard together. I was just talking to her, and I said, well, what are you doing on Valentine's Day? She said, nothing. I said, well, would you like to get together since I'm not with anyone? She said, yes.
She said, I want you to come over here. And I said, what you want? She said, I need you to do something for me. And I said, what? When I went over there he was. I whispered to her, I said, that's a giant. Because he's so tall and she's small. We talked about him. And I told her, I said, you know what? He seemed like a good person.
Words just can't describe about Jackie. She's just a sweet child. Always have been. From a child coming up, and she always believed in helping.
Jackie is the kind of person that if she can help you, she'll do it. But when she told me that she was going on the street, and I'm going like, are you sure? But she's tough. She was always tough. And I would always tell her, be careful. Watch your back. Don't let your guard down.
We were young, so you pretty much didn't have like that worry as far as something could happen to us because we were young, and the way things are now, it wasn't like back then. We work in the same shift. We would talk on the phone. Once I got out of roll call, we still talked a little bit more. From that point, we stopped talking because she had to go answer a call. So it was like 9:45 when last time we talked.
First on 5, a Saraland police officer is in critical condition this evening after being shot at a home off of Celeste Road.
I was at work when I got the phone call, and he called and he said, hey, Jackie been shot in the head, because he was crying. And I was like, she been shot in the head?
Then the phone rang, and my granddaughter say, I'm on my way to pick you up. I called her by a nickname. I said, was it Moot? Was it Moot? And she said, now I just need you to calm down. And it was her.
And I asked them one thing. I said, is she living? They say, yeah. I said, well, she gonna be all right. I said, she gonna be just fine. And I still believe my child gonna be fine.
So we received a call for a shooting, for a scene call, and it was not until we were actually en route that we were told that it was for a police officer. So when we landed, Officer Tucker was being cared for by members of the Saraland Fire Department and also by Mobile County EMS. She had sustained what appeared to be a single gunshot wound to her left temple. We quickly got her loaded into the aircraft and set out for USA. We continued to provide care for her in the air and, of course, notified USA of our estimated time of arrival.
I got to the hospital, parked, and I was looking for her to be there when I got there, which she wasn't there yet. So I sat right there in the emergency room entrance where they bring patients in. When you told somebody shot in the head and being a police officer, you have seen plenty of people with gunshot wounds to the head. My mind is just thinking the worst now because I don't know. And they bring her in off the helicopter, and I see where the injury side was. And she wasn't moving. So I'm not knowing what's going on. Her arm is just hanging off the stretcher. So I'm like, man, what's going on? She's not moving, nothing. So at that point I got up, I went outside because I broke down. I woke up praying. And I woke up praying. I'm looking at my wife go in like this. And I said, I did what he asked me to do. I prayed. And I was standing there and I was just venting a lot. And it's just so much was going through my head because I'm not knowing.
What sets aside a level 1 trauma center such as the USA Trauma Center from other ERs is really the specialized providers that are there. For instance, our trauma center is the only one in the Gulf Coast region that has actual trained trauma surgeons in hospital 24 hours a day. It wasn't until we were all there waiting on the patient to arrive that we saw the police officers starting to show up before the ambulance arrived, and they alerted us to the fact that one of the police officers here in town was actually shot in an altercation.
Well, we consider the police and the paramedics as part of our team also. They're the first responder, but they're bringing these victims to us. So when a paramedic or a fireman or a policeman gets injured, it feels like it's one of your family members. So it does make it more difficult to separate the emotions from the physical side of being a physician.
When Officer Tucker arrived via the helicopter, we brought her into the trauma bay and we treat her just like we would any trauma patient. That starts with totally exposing the patient, looking for all potential life-threatening injuries. We knew that she had that one reported gunshot wound. We had very quickly, within a matter of a couple of minutes, determined that she didn't have any other life-threatening injuries other than her probable traumatic brain injury from the gunshot wound to the head. This was certainly a life and death situation. And when it comes to any type of brain injury, if an intervention is needed, such as a craniotomy, removing a partial piece of the skull to help stop the bleeding, that needs to be done quickly.
Oftentimes when a person, I respond to a trauma call, I hear the bell ring, and I go downstairs. I walk over with the trauma surgeons. We get the CT scan. We look at it together as it's being done. And in her case, I realized that she sustained a gunshot wound to the left side of her head, that she had a blood clot there, and that she had major pressure from the bullet wound that was pushing inside her brain that needed to be relieved. The brain was shifted, and we needed to do something immediately, or else she was going to pass away. We brought her to the operating room. There was bleeding from the scalp and the brain. She was asleep, intubated under general anesthesia. Of course, shaved the head, and I opened up over that area, removed the bone flap, and stopped the bleeding in the brain.
As soon as we opened the skull, we identified immediately that there was a lot of brain damage there, which was pretty difficult on us because we had high hopes that she would just have bleeding there without much damage. But the blast effect from that bullet actually transcended into the brain and caused a good bit of damage.
In her case, her gunshot wound involved part of the brain that controls language.
At that point, we knew that she was going to have some neurological difficulties. It's impossible to tell, what type of difficulty she'll have, and only time will tell.
So I spoke to her husband, Officer Tucker, and told him that the surgery went well. I controlled the bleeding. I was very careful just to stop the bleeding, not to remove any brain tissue, because again, I was worried about the eloquence of that part of the brain that was injured, and wanted to be sure that she would regain language function. I told him that we're going to try to control the swelling, that I would work with the trauma team, and we gave medications to control swelling. We got daily CAT scans to see how the brain looked, and watched her over a series of more than a month.
So in the first few days, we're really just making sure that the patient's completely supported medically, and we're really looking for any complications that could occur, like rebleeding.
Initially, her prognosis seemed like it may be fairly poor, and we were always hoping for the best. And we knew that everything had been done surgically for her, but it was going to be a waiting game to let the swelling get back down and to see how things turned out.
I would say it was probably like 7 to 8 days after when they started trying to wake her up out of the induced coma. And she would look around and she would look at us, and she just looked, and you could tell she knew who we were.
I do remember the first time that she followed commands. It was something simple like a little thumbs up, and that was a really big deal because that then meant that she was going to now be a good rehab candidate and that she was showing significant signs of being purposeful.
So for her, we started off very early doing range of motion and then quickly moved to starting to get her up to a chair and then get her to the edge of the bed. My time at the beginning was talking to the family, helping them to understand that I needed them to talk to her, to reach in, to let her know that they were there, that touch was important, and just letting them know that we were in this together. Good, Jackie. Come on. Anytime anybody takes their first step, it's that Kodak moment. Good. Keep going, yeah. It's that moment when you're like, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. Because look, they can take a step again.
By the time she left, she was able to smile. She's turning her head. She's looking around. She recognizes her family. She was able to interact with her daughters, with her husband. Not able to speak much, but she could start to mouth some words or whisper. But it was a pretty drastic difference from not even knowing if she's going to survive the night to having her going off to physical therapy at a great rehab center and really stable when she left. So it was a pretty big transformation. It was, I think, as good as he could ever hope for with an injury like that.
I talked to her husband all the time, especially at the beginning when she was transferred to rehab, and he's concerned and he wants to be sure that she continues to improve, and she has. She's done quite well.
This is the best team I've ever worked with, and I've been to some pretty good places. I would say the best way to describe the personnel at our trauma center is they're here because they believe they make a difference, and I certainly believe that we do. We do have a big responsibility as the only trauma center on the Gulf Coast, and I think our team understands that, and that's why they work here.
The University of South Alabama Medical Center is the only facility in Mobile that has fellowship-trained trauma surgeons. It's a top-notch team, and it's a dedicated team. When the trauma patient rolls in the door downstairs, everybody kicks into action. Everybody has their own role. They know what to do, and it's a well-functioning machine.
You think that you love someone, and going through this and experience this, it brings more out of you. It shows how much you truly love someone. I always say, I love my wife, I love her, but it really shows how much you love them once you get to a point to where you're on this thin line of losing them. I feel like, they responded quickly. Dr. Rusniak and his team made good decisions. I feel like they did help save her life.
What Jackie is going through, she's gonna come through it.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you for taking care of Jackie. You did a wonderful job.